Just when I think that things cannot get worse, they do. I'm literally sitting here at a loss for words. There is so much evil, so much stupidity, and so much blindness to all of it that I am almost at a loss for words. Almost. How is it possible for the media to ignore the direct bombshell evidence that Hillary created the Russiagate hoax? How is it possible for a high-tech civilization to ignore its imminent destruction? How is it possible for a multi-billion-dollar software company to destroy its own product? How is it possible for a tiny island to ignore absolute death just a few miles away? If I wasn't watching it with my own eyes and hearing it with my own ears, I'm not sure that I would believe it myself. Welcome to the Shotcast. I'm John Little on a way too warm Saturday night in southern Taiwan on the Taiwanese version of Independence Day, October 10th. It's 10:10, and they're celebrating the fall of the Qing dynasty with fireworks and everything. I even had to wait until after 10 p.m. to get ready to record this. Oh, and all the backgrounds for these videos? Those are, and since August 15th, they've all been pictures of Taiwan. All of them. I'm tired of China's desire to murder the 23 million people on this beautiful island, so I want to show a little bit of what they want to destroy. Now, before going on, hit like, click subscribe, and whack that little bell. It helps, really. Also, subscribe to the Shock Letter. It's free at theshockletter.com. And you can also find my books on Facebook and Twitter, and the links for all of that and more are in the description section below and in the main article on omegashock.com. Also, do not forget to pray for this ministry. The world is becoming more and more unsettled every day, and I want to make sure that you understand what is happening so that you can serve the Lord to the best of your ability in these last days. Oh, and by the way, for those of you who have wondered why I haven't posted or replied to comments, why I haven't responded to email, keep listening. My computer trouble has been interesting. And now let's get to today's main topic. Over the Seneca Cliff into complete collapse, and I can hardly believe it. Only some of you will understand what I'm about to say, and I don't blame you if you don't. I wouldn't have understood 30 years ago, or even 20. I still remember how stupid we all were in the 80s and 90s, how confident of the future, how good it was to be young, vigorous, and a part of a system that seemed to be unstoppable. I knew that the foundations were utterly corrupt, but everything was just so big, so enormous, that collapse just didn't seem possible. And absolutely no one ever uttered that word. Collapse. You just didn't talk about stuff like that. America was the never-ending empire of the sun. Nothing could stop what we were, what we would be. We had big dreams and even bigger opportunities. We told ourselves that there were no limits to our future if we could only dream big enough. We were the America of Norman Rockwell and Neil Armstrong. We had American values and American ideals. When the Mad Kaiser and the evil Nazis threatened Europe, we stopped them. When Imperial Japan raped and murdered its way across East Asia, we stopped them. When communism threatened the world, we stopped them. When the Arabs tried to destroy Israel, we told them that they couldn't. We were great because we were good. But that wasn't completely true. Yes, we did become great, and there was goodness in us. Eisenhower put "In God We Trust" on our money. We gave honor to God in our Pledge of Allegiance. We fought and died to end slavery. And across America, we learned to read so that we could read the Bible. In some ways, we really were as great and as good as we thought that we were. But the shine of the American Imperium distracted us from the rot within. In our arrogance, we forgot what made us great. And in that arrogance, we slowly but surely stopped being good. But hey, we were still the shining city on a hill, right? Right? Yeah, right. We let the foundations rot away even as we paved the roof in gold. And it's something that we humans have done throughout all of history, and no one wants to talk about it. Lucius Annaeus Seneca 2,000 years ago talked about it, which might be why Nero killed him. When you speak truth, and when you are too close to power when you do it, power rarely lets you live. What was it that Seneca said? Esset aliquid imbecile. Okay, it's Latin. I'm not going to repeat that. Basically, what it means is, it would be great if we collapsed as slowly as we grew. A more literal translation from Google Translate is, it would be some consolation for ourselves that in our failings that slowly die out if all that happens. Now, all right, that didn't sound very good either. Anyway, I like my translation better. Then what was my translation? It would be great if we collapsed as slowly as we grew. I find it interesting that Seneca knew Paul the Apostle pretty well. Paul talked to everyone in Caesar's household, so there was literally no way that Seneca could have avoided Paul, even if he wanted to. Christian tradition even says that Paul and Seneca wrote quite a few letters to each other and had a very cordial relationship. But who knows if that's true? Was Seneca a Christian? Nope. Sorry, don't go there. Just because he knew Paul and liked him doesn't mean that he believed in God. Just because he believed in morality doesn't mean that he accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior. But there's one thing that Seneca did know. Civilization falls apart faster than it comes together. He talked about that when he was much older, while he was an advisor to Nero, at least in his letters to his friend Lucilium. And it was his ability to see the corruption festering at the heart of the Roman Empire that probably led to Nero having him killed. Of course, killing people was something that Nero did, but I've gotten off of the topic. I'm talking about Seneca because someone coined a term, the Seneca Cliff. He then wrote a book called The Seneca Effect and even mentioned the Seneca Trap. The guy who coined those terms and wrote that book is Ugo Bardi. He's a smart guy working for an evil organization. But we don't care how smart he is or who he works for. The important point is that one observation that we must all remember. We grow slowly and then die quickly. Those are my words, not his, but it's a universal law. In literally every living structure, the system grows slowly, hits a limit, and then dies quickly, if left on its own. And all of that has everything to do with Adam eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Before Adam's sin, a different system prevailed. I don't know what it was. No one does. But it certainly was not one of slow growth followed by quick death. But there I go again, getting off of the topic. So let's get to the point. And the point isn't about Seneca. It's about how our current civilization will die. But let me tell you about how I started thinking about the death of our civilization. And it starts with the imminent demise of my computer. No, it's not dead, but since it will die pretty soon... Anyway, normally I get a new computer about every 5 years. Not because I want to, but because I wear them out. And I was at the 5-year mark on my most recent PC when I decided to do the smart thing for once. And replace it before it died. Unfortunately, the computer I bought wasn't quite as good as I thought it would be, which is why I have not been able to respond to those who have sent me email or left comments. The reason why I am now still having computer trouble has everything to do with how foolish and stupid Microsoft is, and how foolish and stupid a certain Taiwanese motherboard manufacturer is. And I'm not the smartest person in the world myself. The other possibility is that my computer is demon-possessed, so we'll see. Anyway, in May, Microsoft released a new version of Windows 10 called version 2004. It had all kinds of great new features that created all kinds of great new problems. Worse, Microsoft did not do a very good job of telling computer manufacturers about what they would need to do to make sure that the new version of Windows 10 would still operate properly on their motherboards. And that's on top of all the nice new bugs that Microsoft created when they produced their latest version. Those of you who have been in the computer industry long enough know that Microsoft is a lousy company. They are horribly corrupt and do shoddy work, but they do great marketing. Oh, and they have deep connections to the American deep state. Does anybody remember seeing those NSA functions in Windows NT? I do. They're still there, but they hide them better than they did 20 years ago. So anyway, I went to a local computer store here in Tainan, coolpc.com.tw, and bought what I thought of as a reasonably good system. Not cutting edge, just a moderately good system that will help me write and do videos, like this one. But when the clerk who handed the machine over to me, when he did that, he said something interesting. Don't input your Windows 10 key until you've used it for 2 weeks. I was puzzled by that, but like most human beings, I ignored what I did not understand. And yes, that is exactly how we operate. We ignore and even forget that which we do not comprehend. Well, now I know why the clerk said what he said. My PC started crashing within minutes of installing Windows 10 version 2004. And for days, it would crash about every hour. And I came within an inch of taking the machine back to the store and asking them to fix it. And it would have been the first time in almost 40 years of dealing with computers that I had ever done that. I still might need to cave in and go back to the store and ask them to fix my computer since it's crashing about every 2 to 3 hours now. But I think that I know what the problem is. Microsoft is run by morons, and hardware companies aren't much better. Oh, and there's one more delightful thing that I discovered. Then it has everything to do with Taiwan and China and a whole bunch of else. And you will just love what I'm about to tell you. Are you sitting down? Good. Nvidia is a Taiwanese company that makes great graphic processors for the PC and also makes processing units for supercomputers. But they are also giving our information to Chinese intelligence services. How do I know? After installing the drivers for the graphics card that I was using, I also installed an app called GeForce Experience. Once upon a time, it wasn't a dangerous thing to do. They didn't ask for private information. They didn't collect private information. It was safe. But when they changed their application and started asking for your data, I stopped installing it. However, with all of the trouble with my current PC, I decided to install the app. Maybe it would help fix something that needed to be fixed. What was the first thing that Nvidia did? They sent a vast chunk of my personal data to China. And all of that data is now in the hands of the Chinese government and even in the hands of the Chinese version of the NSA. Email password, hardware ID, operating system version, my nationality, IP address, MAC address, physical location, probably even my shoe size. Think about this for a minute. This is a Taiwanese company with headquarters in Taipei that is handing over private data from almost every PC user in Taiwan, handing over all of that data to the Chinese government, to Chinese intelligence agencies. They're probably doing the same thing to you. That's right. Your information is probably being handed over to the Chinese government and Chinese intelligence agencies. The only good point in all of this is that Chinese government hackers tend to be pretty lousy. So lousy, in fact, that we discovered an unsecured text file of all of their high-level targets. If you want to hear and see more on that, watch a video titled China's Secret Global Spy Operation, Zhenhua Data Leak. And it's from China Uncensored. It's a good thing that China is run by morons. Otherwise, Taiwan would have been destroyed a long time ago by its own morons. Yes, Taiwan is also run by morons, just smaller morons. Of course, America is also run by morons, so criticizing the Chinese and Taiwanese morons would be a bit hypocritical. But think about how such stupidity affects civilization. Stupid people kill smart systems. And it's actually a good thing. Otherwise, we Christians would be in a lot more trouble than we are right now. If the evil in our government was efficient and smart, they would have killed us off a long time ago. So the stupidity of evil actually works in our favor. It's just maddening. But back to my accidental data breach. One of the reasons why this is so serious for me is because I'm an American living close to an important airbase that is responsible for intercepting Chinese aircraft. Because I might be involved in that base or other sensitive projects, they would probably want to try to start monitoring what I'm doing. But they probably won't because they're morons. And I changed a lot of stuff to block their access. Now, how does this apply to Seneca's Cliff and the destruction of our civilization? First of all, it's a lesson in how humanity is both stupid and corrupt. A Taiwanese company is sabotaging the security of their own country for profit. It's insanely stupid, but very human. Secondly, my technical issues forced me to slow down and do two dangerous things. Listen to Art Berman and think about what he said. Art Berman is probably the most important petroleum geologist on the planet. And the reason why he's so important is due to more than his intelligence and his access to core information on crude oil. No, the biggest reason why he's so important is due to one thing. He's independent. He's so smart, also, and with computer models that accurately predict where oil markets are going, that investment professionals regularly ask him for advice on where the price of oil is headed. And they trust his analysis because he hasn't been captured by the big oil companies. And the one investment channel that likes to talk about him the most is Macro Voices. And I heard them interview Art Berman on a YouTube video called Macro Voices number 239, Art Berman, U.S. production, still set to decline, but so is demand. Listen to that video if you want, but it's not all that important. Why? Because they don't actually want to know the most important analysis that Art Berman has to offer. In fact, almost no one wants to know what he's really saying. And the Macro Voices moderators tend to push him around when they bring him on. It's one of many, many reasons why I have a low opinion of financial experts, quote unquote. Most financial experts only want to hear what confirms their own bias. They do not want to hear anything that challenges their reality or their paycheck, especially their paycheck. And since Art Berman is forced to dance to their tune to promote his services and earn his living, that's what he does when he talks to financial experts. But because he has a conscience and wants to tell people the truth, he routinely talks to less experts. That's why when I heard him on Macro Voices, I went looking for any other appearances that he might have made, and I found him here in a YouTube video called Art Berman, oil expert on price, cost, value, history, and future of oil, RCS episode 51. That video is worth listening to, all of it, more than once. And because George Gaiman didn't have an agenda, or his name is maybe George Gammon, didn't have an agenda that packed Art Berman into a corner, Art Berman was able to speak a lot more freely. In fact, I don't think that I have ever heard him speak as freely as he spoke in that interview. And that is incredibly sad, and a sad reflection on the investment industry. The investment industry is run by morons, and I know this because I was one. It's also probably why Art Berman is one of the most depressed experts that you will hear on the internet, and he knows what's coming, but people won't let him talk about it. I'm pretty depressed myself, but no one is telling me to shut up and sit down, at least not like what they're doing to Art. Anyway, here are some quotes from the video that you should pay extra attention to. Quote, "A barrel of oil is worth 4.5 years of human labor. Technology does not create energy. All technology is a way to convert energy into work. The world has been on OPEC plus life support for 4 years. There is too much oil now, but in 5 to 10 years that will end." In 5 to 10 years, there will not be too much oil. Oil is currently underpriced. We will never go back to the height of 2018 production. The U.S. government will nationalize the shale industry. Oil is way too important to fail. America won World War II because U.S. access to oil was better than anyone else. Humans have never gone from a higher energy density to a lower energy density. Everyone is promoting what they are selling. Close quote. But even though he was given a lot more freedom to speak his mind, Art Berman still needed to dance around the two words that he just could not say. Peak oil. He couldn't say it because morons would crucify him if he did. But notice what he did say. Quote, "We will never go back to the height of 2018 production," close quote. Do you understand what that means? It means that we went over Seneca's Cliff. We went past peak oil 2 years ago. And we are just waiting for our civilization to die. And I believe that your life depends on understanding that. This isn't me that's saying this. This is the #1 petroleum geologist in the world. Hopefully you have already been preparing for the worst, or preparing for the worst years in human history. And yes, that is exactly what we are talking about. The only unknown element is how long it will take for the world to wake up to what Art Berman already knows. You'll know when they do, when the wars begin. But wait, there's more. It's bad enough that our civilization faces utter destruction because the amount of energy available to us is declining. It's bad enough that our computer infrastructure is managed by morons with big paychecks. It's bad enough that our investment professionals are both ignorant and arrogant. It's bad enough that hostile intelligence agencies are grabbing our private data. It's bad enough that the beautiful story that we told ourselves about how wonderful we are has turned into a horrible parody of reality. It's bad enough to see all of that, but now we can add a picture of corruption so obvious that I am shocked to even contemplate it. Public, in your face, completely ignored, corruption at every single level of society, and all wrapped up in a population that will not even talk about it. And you might not even know what I'm talking about. On Tuesday, October 6th, John Ratcliffe, the United States Director of National Intelligence, declassified the handwritten notes of then CIA Director John Brennan. And those notes proved that Hillary Clinton engaged in unspeakable corruption. It also proved that Barack Hussein Obama knew all about it, and the mainstream media is covering it up. Worse, the average American is completely ignoring it. Every level of government is ignoring it. Not one, outside of a handful of people, is talking about this. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. Hillary Clinton committed treason, and nobody cares. Let that sink in. Let that go deep. Ponder all of what that means. Or not. It's up to you. But one thing that is not up to you is the truth that your society, for the 90% of you who are Americans, has turned to evil at such a basic level that there is no way that it can be saved. Even if we weren't going to suffer a catastrophic reduction in energy, this would still mean the end of America as we know it. There is just no way to survive such utter, mind-numbing depravity. And history shows us that no civilization has survived such corruption, at least not without intervention. And even then, such interventions turn civilization into a shadow of its former self. Lucius Annaeus Seneca saw the corruption of the Roman Empire. He knew what was coming, so Nero killed him. The only thing that kept the Roman Empire from falling was the intervention of the military, which only delayed the collapse. And that military intervention turned Rome into a menacing, festering blot on humanity, and it only transferred the corruption. It never got rid of it. The lack of response by the American people to what happened on Tuesday should be unbelievable to everyone. Unfortunately, we've seen evidence of this decrepit apathy for years. People just don't want to believe the treason at the heart of the CIA and the rest of the American deep state. But until Tuesday, there was a thin veneer of plausible deniability. There was at least a fig leaf that the American deep state could hide behind. Now there's not even that. But they're safe because the American people don't care. The treason of Hillary Clinton and the complete lack of concern by the American people is a sign that America is finished. No amount of patriotism will ever be able to recover what has been lost. It's just not possible. Stick a fork in us. We're done. Then let me add one more thing. It's bad enough that we've gone over Seneca's Cliff. It's bad enough that no one cares about Hillary Clinton's treason. But there's one more thing to make the picture even worse. The Democrats are going to steal the election, and no one cares. Lionel made that point a few days ago, and he's absolutely right. His exact words were, "Nobody cares that they're going to steal this election. Nobody." From Michael William LeBron, also known as Lionel of Lionel Nation. My hope is that this makes you disgusted. I hope that this makes you reevaluate all the stories that you told yourself about how great it is to be an American, how great your country is. And yeah, I'm an American, and my family is as American as any family can possibly be. However, I benefit from seeing the American government at work in ways that few ever have. I've watched America use Israel as their chew toy. I've watched the dirtbags running the United States push around Israel, a desperate country fighting for its life, especially when it was fighting for its life. I benefit from seeing how evil the mainstream media is because Jerusalem was every journalist's last big assignment before being sent off to the imperial capital, Washington, D.C. I saw how evil those wretched individuals were, so I'm not surprised by what the media have been doing to America. I also benefit from living for 10 years on an island off the coast of China, an island that the Chinese Communist Party wishes to murder and destroy. And I have watched America use Taiwan like they've used Israel as their little chew toy, while playing games of imperial ambition. You probably have no idea how evil your politicians are, and I understand why you would not. Your education keeps you from seeing it. Your television and newspaper keep you from seeing it. All the media and entertainment that you consume, all of it, covers over the foulest corruption and gives that wonderful smell of eau de respectabilité. Your pastor might even have his own hand in how you've been tricked into believing the lies. But hopefully, you are seeing the truth. You can't stop the lies, but you can stop believing them. One more thing before I go. It's about Taiwan. The situation here is not good. It hasn't been good for longer than most people realize, and the average Taiwanese has been slow to wake up to how dire their predicament is. But they are waking up. I just don't know how long Taiwan has to fix their neglected defenses. As bad as the current government is, they are at least trying to rectify years of bad management. They have even woken up to the need to change the basic structure of society so that the core cultural differences between them and China are more noticeable and closer to Western norms. Taiwan made a lot of bad decisions over the past decades, and her enemies in America and China have made those mistakes even worse. But there is one thing that Taiwan has done that is worthy of high regard. They protected the right of Christians to worship God and to share their love of Christ. In fact, I have more freedom to serve God here in Taiwan than I do in most places in America. But if China succeeds in its foul desire to destroy Taiwan, that freedom will be gone. And Taiwan's enemies in America are more than willing to allow China to destroy this island. If you want Taiwan to die, vote Democrat. I'm just surprised that the average Taiwanese has so little understanding of how dangerous their situation is. But I can report one good thing. Today, on 10/10, and yesterday on the eve of 10/10, their Independence Day, no jets roared overhead scrambling to intercept another Chinese Air Force incursion. But we'll see what they do tomorrow. That's it for the Shockcast. Again, hit like, click subscribe, and whack that little bell. And please share this video or the MP3. After you've done all that, leave a comment. I like seeing what you have to say about what was said here. Your input is welcome. Then help keep Omega Shock and the Shockcast alive. There's a link below that can help you do that. I did this for free for 8 years. Now I can't. Also, subscribe to the Shock Letter at theshockletter.com and read my books for free, When Jacob Returns and Ezekiel's Fire. You do not want to get caught by what is coming.